Shout out to YouTube. We are live there as well. We're going to have a bit of a community conversation that's going to pick up on a few of the terms that we referenced and introduced yesterday, some of the concepts, looking at what's happening with Black unemployment. Now, I mentioned the fact that there were 106,000 new unemployed Black women as of last month. Those were the most recent job numbers revealed to us. And one of the reasons this is a problem is because, well, we know why it's a problem. It's a problem because people be unemployed. And when you're unemployed and you're talking about one of the groups or the segments of our community that was not only gainfully employed, but also the most educated in terms of degrees, the most college educated. And Black women are often considered one of the primary contributors to home financial sustainability. In fact, for those of us who live in single parent homes, which tend to skew more towards being led by women, being a single income earner and now facing increased levels of unemployment is going to be a big challenge. And I want us to have a discussion about what that looks like. Today is Umoja and the Kwanzaa calendar for 2025. That means unity, where we strive for and maintain unity within the family, community, nation, and race. And so I want to talk about what this is going to mean and how we adapt, how we adjust, because it's one thing to have a conversation about the numbers. It's a very different thing to have a conversation about what we are going to do to make the numbers better. Somebody said L Boogie for president. Absolutely not. No, that's not. Don't put that on me. That's a curse. I don't want nothing to do with it, but I appreciate the sentiment. But one of the things I want to start with today is a look at what's happening at Walmart. The reason I want to focus on Walmart is because Walmart, as we know, is an institution that caters to poor people. Not only poor people, but it caters to people who do not have the capacity to go shopping other places. It is a place where you can find what you need very affordably. Walmart announced just recently, as of like today, that they are going to be raising prices because of tariffs. They're going to be raising prices at Walmart, not, Target, where we ain't going no more, but at Walmart. According to CNN, the world's largest retailer said that Donald Trump's tariffs are too high, and they're going to raise prices on the items because of the Trump global trade war. They said that their spokesperson, Walmart CEO Doug McMillon, said that we will do our best to keep our prices as low as possible, but given the magnitude of the tariffs, even at the reduced levels announced this week, we aren't able to absorb all the pressure given the reality of narrow retail margins. The higher tariffs will result in higher prices. Now, I know some of y'all are thinking, wait a minute, Lurie, you just told us that they put a pause on the tariffs and that the Americans dropped the tariffs on China from 145% down to 30%. Keep in mind, that's 30% higher than what we were already paying for things. And so when you take the base level of what we were paying for things and then you add a 30% tax, you are going to increase the amount of money that people have to pay for the goods. According to the report, Walmart is basically indicating that their price hikes are going to increase later this month. According to Walmart financial chief John David Rainey, he says, I'm concerned that the consumer is going to start seeing higher prices. You'll begin to see that likely towards the tail end of this month, meaning May, and then certainly much more in June. Now, because the tariffs have been paused, those 90-day, the 145% tariffs have been paused for 90 days, there's still a lot of confusion because folks are like, well, wait, if the 145% tariff is paused, but the 30% tariff is not paused, that means at the end of the pause, we could go back up to 145% tariffs. And so now in this 90-day pause, according to the Financial Times, show y'all the article so y'all know I'm not talking out the side of my neck. It's called Ports and Carriers Prepare for a 90-Day Rush is the name of the article. And according to the report, ports and shipping lanes are bracing for a whipsaw in demand as businesses race to stockpile Black Friday and Christmas goods during this 90-day ceasefire. What this basically means is we are going to have a period because right now, according to the report, shipments coming out of China, 400,000 decrease in the number of ships that were typically leaving China in the course of this pause as a result of Liberation Day. So Liberation Day goes into effect, ships start coming, people stop coming, people stop and corporations stop placing orders because ain't nobody going to be able to afford 145% tariff. That's ridiculous. And so as Donald Trump said, this basically created a trade embargo, meaning wasn't no trade happening. And this ain't what embargo means, but basically it meant wasn't nothing going to embargo, wasn't nothing going to go because they ain't had no money to be able to pay 145% tariffs. But now that we are in this pause, you're going to see corporations rushing to increase their orders so that they can squeeze as many orders as they can in these 90 days. So we are going to experience a time at the end of this month where because of this 90-day of the Liberation Day impact, there's going to be a period of scarcity in the stores. And then as people are rushing to place these orders, there's going to be a rush of orders that come in. Then there'll be bounty. And then depending on what happens after these 190-day pause or I said 190-day pause. After this 90-day pause, then we're going to figure out what happens next. That is all a lot of uncertainty. What is certain, however, is that Black people are about to experience what happens when our employment needs meet Project 2025. According to Word in Black, Stacey M. Brown, who, hold on, let me pull up the article. Word in Black is something you guys need to be reading. capitalbnews.org is where you need to be reading as well. But Word in Black is one of these other outfits that has pooling reporting from Black newspapers from all across the country. And according to reporter Stacey M. Brown, in an article entitled "More than 106,000 Black Women Lost Jobs Last Month," it's not just Black women who are struggling with what's happening right now, but Black women did experience the steepest job loss of any demographic group in April. The April report showed there was a very significant setback for Black women in the labor market, even though this country added 177,000 jobs and the national unemployment rate held steady, which means the only people getting let go was us. The number of unemployed Black women jumped from 10.325 million in March to 10.219 million in April. Their unemployment rate jumped from 5.1% to 6.1%, the largest month-to-month increase among all racial and gender groups. Among other findings, the labor force participation rate for Black women edged to 61.2%, which indicated a loss in employment and a possible decline in overall workforce engagement. Now, I know there are a lot of you, and shout out to those of you who listened to the podcast yesterday where I was talking with Leah Goodridge on her concept of professionalism in the workplace being constructed as a part of racism. If you have questions about that, just go listen to the podcast. Oh, and by the way, to all of y'all who've been supporting the podcast, which is called Lurie Breaks It Down, available anywhere you get your podcast, we found out today that we are, after being out on that podcast for 2 months, and we only post 3 times a week, we are just under 100,000 downloads for the podcast. Yes, honey. Yes. Very proud of that and the work that we're doing. Shout out to Amina, who produces the podcast, and she's dope. So again, Lurie Breaks It Down anywhere you get your podcast. Thank you for supporting. But what this means is that, and in the conversation I had with Leah yesterday, she said, now some of these numbers also include women who walked away. And that is very important for us to be mindful of, that a lot of Black women have recognized, you know what, there's no future for me here. I'm better off figuring out things on my own. But we are in a time right now where when the entire labor market is contracting for us, it's not necessarily contracting for other people in the same way that it's contracting for us, because according to the report, Asian Americans had the lowest unemployment rate in April at 3.0%, while the rate for Hispanic Americans was 5.2% and 3.8% for white Americans, meaning other people are navigating this perhaps a bit more healthily than we are. And what that means is we as a community are going to have to figure out, how are we going to reorganize our infrastructure for job sustainability such that we are insulated from all of this work. Now, I've talked a lot in previous episodes and on previous shows and on previous platforms about the fact that we are the only group of people, because of our unique history. So this is not about blame. This is about just the reality of what it means to descend from those who had been enslaved and forcibly brainwashed to, at least, even if you didn't believe that the white man's ice was colder, you kind of believe that the white man's ice is colder. And I want to say, I say it that way because I think sometimes we give too much power to enslavers and we don't give enough credence to our ancestors. But I think we can also acknowledge that there is a real reality of being convinced that what white people have is better. And that, I think, is something we are going to have to figure out, because what we're clear about is the only reason that a lot of us had these jobs in the first place was because these corporations recognize that if we don't hire them, we are going to be exposed to discrimination lawsuits. They no longer have to fear that, because the only people who can now file discrimination lawsuits as a result of this past election are the white boys. And sometimes white women, but only if white women are working on behalf of white men. And so if your employer, who didn't really want your Black ass there in the first place, if your employer no longer has to fear being sued, and they only had, let's be honest, for those of us who were working in these corporate American spaces, we were only getting hired at the numbers that frankly were going to be comfortable enough for white people. When Imani Gandhi is on here and we're talking about quotas and diversity, one of the things that she says is diversity, equity, inclusion programs was for white people. We're going to bring in just enough Blacks to make us feel like we're diverse, but not too many, because we would never want too many of the Blacks. And so they hired as few of us as they could get away with without facing a lawsuit. And now we were often already dealing with the last hired, first fired. So while this news is shocking and the news is bad and it is not good, and I'm not trying to Pollyannish our way on out of it, the reality is we kind of always been new. right? We kind of always been new. Now, I mentioned yesterday, or was it? It might have been in my conversation with Andrew McCaskill, who was on earlier this week. You guys can hear that conversation on my YouTube page. But we had this conversation, and I think I also mentioned this yesterday about that discussion that when Roland Martin years ago was on TV1, he, Ron Busby, Maggie Anderson, author of Our Black Year, were discussing the fact that we as Black people, if we focus on umoja, I said today is umoja. Today is umoja, unity, which is what? To strive for and maintain unity within the family, community, nation, and the race. If we as a community were to take money out of our pockets that we are already spending, and if we were to spend that money with Black-owned businesses, we as a people would be able to inject enough capital into those Black-owned businesses that we could hire ourselves. And if we were doing that, that is a job creation program that does not require the government to approve it. It does not require anybody to vote on it. It does not require any agency to pass a policy. It is literally something that was within our umoja ass hands. Sorry, I probably should not put umoja and ass in the same context, but what I'm saying is this is a problem that we did not create, but there is a solution that can't nobody take from us. And I think if we were focusing more on the umoja aspects that present themselves in this time, then we might be able to realize that. I feel like in some ways the ancestors was like, we waited for y'all. Y'all did the civil rights movement. We waited for y'all to get your shit together. You ain't get it together. Now the white nationalists are in here and we are we are fragmented and all over the place, but we don't have to be if we use this moment instructively. If we use this moment creatively. For those of you who are not listening to Urban View, when I mentioned these numbers yesterday, the conversation that Roland Martin, Ron Busby of Black Chambers, and Maggie Anderson of Our Black Year, the author, the conversation they had was basically this. And this was years ago. So imagine these numbers today. This was years ago. If at that time, Black people, this was like early 2000s, Black people spent 2 pennies out of every dollar, two pennies out of every dollar with Black-owned businesses. And what they said was at that time, we had 1.9 businesses owned by Black people that were a sole proprietorship, meaning only one person worked at the business, and that's the person who founded it. So if you make great shea butter, and please, there's only so many things you can do with shea butter. We really don't need any more indexing on shea butter. There are other things that you can create. Shea butter is good, but we got a whole lot of shea butter, okay? But if you sorry, I don't mean ain't no shade against the shea butter community. But if you are, I mean, I use shea butter. I smell like shea butter right now, thank God. But if you are a shea butter proprietor, you are a sole proprietor, meaning you get the shea nut, you crack it, you open it, you scoop out the nut meat on the inside, and you're in your kitchen, you're whipping it up in the kitchen. You whip it in the kitchen. Sorry, I got a reminder of a song about cooking crack. It's not what I'm talking about. But you're in the kitchen and you're baking up your shea butter. And then you whip it up, you add your essential oils, and then you bottle it, and then you sell it. You are a sole proprietor. You don't have nobody working for you. Now, you might be pulling in your kids and your cousins and your husband and them, or your wife and them, depending on who's making the shea butter to help you out. But basically, it's only one person on that payroll. You're a sole proprietor. Proprietor, you're the only one working for the business. At that time, there were 1.9 million Black-owned businesses that were sole proprietorships, meaning only one person is on the payroll. And usually, y'all, when we open a business, we pay for everything else and we don't even pay ourselves a salary. So often a sole proprietor ain't even getting paid. They doing it for the love of the hustle and whatever they can squeeze out. But if we spent those 2 pennies, that's all we spent on Black-owned businesses. And this was, again, like early 2000s, maybe 2007, 2008, when this conversation was taking place. If we as Black people who can control our rate of spend, and we know we can control our rate of spend because our rate of spend just got the Target CEO to have his golden goose salary cut in half. They cut that man's salary in half. The CEO of Target cut his shit in half. Why? Because of us. Because of what we chose to do with our money. Now, with our money, we can cripple an entire multinational corporation. They got targets everywhere. With our money and the withholding of our money, we were able to collectively cripple an entire multinational corporation. Think about that as I continue to explain these numbers. So at that time, 1.9 million sole proprietorships, Black people spent 2 pennies out of every dollar with a Black-owned business. They ran the numbers and they walked the audience through. This is when he was on TV1, before he did the Roland Martin digital show, which is good. You guys should be watching that in the evening, 6 o'clock every night. But he said in that conversation, what the numbers showed us was that if Black people would, instead of just spending 2 pennies with a Black-owned business and 98 pennies out of every dollar with a white or otherwise non-Black-owned business, if we increase the number of pennies that we spend with Black-owned businesses from 2 pennies a dollar to 10 pennies a dollar, that's just an increase of 8 cents out of every dollar. If we did that with our own ability to do it, as we've demonstrated we can do when it came to Target, if we were to do that, we as a group, just with our Umoja, would inject enough capital into those Black-owned businesses that they would be able to hire one additional person. I want you to imagine, with our big old wealth and spending power, not necessarily the same thing, if we were to increase our rate of spend with Black-owned businesses, instead of from 2 pennies to 10 pennies, what if we said, let's get up to 30%? Let's shoot for 30%. Out of every dollar I spend, 30 of them pennies out of every dollar is going to go to a Black-owned business. We could literally solve our own unemployment issues. We don't have to depend on them for anything if we are clear about the power of Umoja, unity, to strive for and maintain unity within the family, community, nation, and race. We have the capacity, as big as this problem is, and there is going to be a great period of transition and travail and difficulty, because this is where we're disrupted. The system has been disrupted, and our traditional patterns of reliance have been disrupted. But if we were to think critically about how we spend our money, the same way we did with Target, and it was easy to do with Target, because, like, how dare you? What the fuck do you think you are? How dare you not value us? You going, after you going to put on all this big old display, your Black History Month displays, your Pride display, all these displays every month. Target got a new display, and then you, who double and triple down on supporting diversity, equity, inclusion, you gonna back up off of us? And we was like, how dare you? There was an insult. We were offended, and rightfully so. I'm curious as to whether the power of our self-love and community love is equal to the power of our collective offense. We made decisions to stop going to a store that we were spending $12 million a day, and we spent $12 million a day in Target, and I was one of them. Can't tell y'all how many times me and my daughter and my son went into Target for 2 things and came out with 57 things. I ain't been to Target. And I at first wasn't even thinking that this protest was going to go anywhere. I told my audience, I was like, I mean, it's great. Nobody at the beginning, people were like, well, we should protest, we should boycott. And it wasn't really sort of organized well. And I was like, listen, I'm not going to be promoting any sort of boycott that I can't help contribute to or help direct. And I didn't see anybody directing it. And then here come Reverend Jamal Bryant. It was like, okay, wait a minute, there's something happening here. And then they put some things together, formalized it. And now you can go to targetfast.com or .org. I can't remember which. Somebody at me. Go to targetfast.org or .com, and you get a whole host of information about the organizational structure. And in addition to boycotting Target, y'all need to also go to targetfast.com or .org. Amina, please let me know which one it is. And look at the list of organizations and companies from which we can purchase. So .org. Thank you. Targetfast.org. So the question I have for us, 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. We have been so proud of ourselves for what we were able to collectively accomplish with Target. We tore them down. That man got a 40% cut to his wages. Salaries. He didn't make wages. He made salaries to his income packet, the CEO of Target. And it feels good. It feels like, yeah, who you think you are? Who gonna check us, boo? But is the power of our offense at Target greater or lesser than the power of our unity when it comes to saving ourselves? And right now, we're gonna have to figure out how to save ourselves, because they just told us they didn't want us there anyway. They didn't want us there. We had to have diversity, equity, inclusion, because white people had a multi-century agreement to it wasn't even a conspiracy. Yeah, it was a conspiracy. I guess, yes, it absolutely was a conspiracy. They had a multi-century conspiracy where they basically conspired together. They worked together to block us from everything. And righteous, we know y'all out there, but it's not enough of you. And y'all not doing enough to challenge your non-righteous community. And so we know what it is to not be wanted and to not be excluded. The question is, over the past 50 and 60 years of integration, have we cured ourselves of the belief that the white man's anything is colder? That is the question. Are we convinced that the white man's ice is simply just ice largely gathered from waters that they stole from us. This is how we're going to have to think about it, because they don't want us in their spaces. When we were in their spaces, they didn't like us there. We weren't able to be our full selves. We were the ones that had to leave our culture at the door. And for those of us who study Tyrone Howard's book on Race and Culture in the Classroom, where he talks about culture, it's not just the clothes that we wear. Shout out to Dianu for my suit today. It's not just the clothes that we wear. Black owned company, check them out. It's not culture is not just the language that we speak. It's not just the foods that we eat. Culture is a multi-generational understanding of what is right and what is wrong. It is how we make sense of the world. It is an analytical tool that we use to help us know when things are moving in the direction that they should and when things are moving in the direction that they should not. Are we, as a people, willing to use our culture only to get on white stages and to get access to white people? Because if so, well, then the answer, we already know the answer. But if we're willing to use our culture to feed ourselves, and if we're willing to deal with the healing that is necessary, because something about the sickness of internalizing white supremacy in a Black body, something about that sickness had us believing that as soon as we got an opportunity to integrate, that was where success lied. Something about the way internalized white supremacy works to destroy Black bodies and Black minds and Black souls and Black spirits, something about that sickness that we were forced to grapple with caused us to believe that abandoning our institutions and embracing theirs and tying our economic sustainability to white people who had never demonstrated a capacity to see our humanity, something about our internalizing of that sickness caused us to think that they were the better option. And I'm hopeful that in this moment we realize, one, they are not. Two, we are our best option. We are the best thing for us. And if we move in the spirit of umoja, unity, to strive for and maintain unity within the family, community, nation, and race, if we do that, we don't need them. We don't need anybody but ourselves. And the sooner we realize that, I think the better off we'll all be, and the better we'll be able to not just rebuild and not just build in our own image, but protect it. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. How do we move forward? What do we do next? I don't have the answers to all of this. I want a community conversation. I want us to get in touch. I want you to call if you've got ideas. If you are somebody who has been victimized by what has happened, you are somebody who has had to navigate some of the difficulties of, maybe you yourself are unemployed, or you know somebody who's unemployed. What are you doing now? How are you navigating now? Are you somebody who's working, but you just waiting for that call because you know it's coming? What are you doing to prepare to move forward? Are you somebody who has had a passion in your heart? You know the universe put you on this planet to do X, Y, Z, and you done spent the past 10, 15, 20 years of your career doing 1, 2, and 3. Knowing damn good and well that X, Y, and Z was where your passion lay, where your power lay. Are you taking business classes? Are you taking entrepreneurial classes? How are you preparing to survive this moment? And what do we need to think about as it pertains to building the infrastructure for how we move forward? D.W. Gurley, was that his name? Amina, can you please? I always say O.W. Gurley, but I think it was D.W. Gurley, who was one of the founders of Black Wall Street. When he and other people were founding these places, they weren't going into towns that were already built. They weren't going to spaces that already had railroad tracks. O.W. Gurley. He and all the other men and women and people who are doing the work of building what would become thriving, enviable metropolises of Blackness. When they started out, they weren't going into an institution that white people had already created and taking it over. They were building from dust and air and the power of faith. When you go out into the West in Oklahoma, and when you're where he was looking to build up Tulsa, he bought land that was barren, that was empty. And from that emptiness, with the seeds that he could secure, with the business mind that he had, he and everybody else who was a part of that and his wife, I can't remember his wife's name, but damn it, she was a fundamental part of it. I mean, if you could look her up before we get off this line, that would be great. Thank you. They didn't come to towns that were already established, that had been turned into ghost towns that they took over. They literally had to build from the ground up. And they did such an amazing job that they had Black-owned hospitals, Black-owned banks, access to railroads, mail systems, sanitation systems, construction systems. They literally built self-sustaining entities and communities. And her name was Emma Evans and Ottoman W. Gurley. These people together, umoja, unity, were able to build for themselves what white people then got so jealous of, they came to steal. Now we got to do better on the defense. But my question for us today, as we get ready to come off this live, appreciate you, Instagram, appreciate you, YouTube. My question for us today is, what does the OW girly energy look like today? What was her name? Emma Evans? What does the Emma Evans of building for us look like today? Where do we find it within ourselves? Because a lot of us are looking for someone else to do it. What in ourselves do we bring to this moment that is going to allow us to, as Karen Hunter always says, bring our brick? How are we building? That is the question that we have to ask. And that is the question that until we answer it, we are going to perpetually be at the whims of people who, quite frankly, can't stand our black asses unless they can profit from them, metaphorically, literally. Okay. Instagram, appreciate y'all. Love you. Got to go by. YouTube, we appreciate y'all. Love you as well. Got to go by. Urban View, 866-801-8255. Oh, y'all, YouTube, if y'all could hit the like and subscribe button, share this with your friends. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Bye. 866-801-8255.